You're listening to Through the Square Window with me, Graeme Kibble-White.
Me, Samira, Ahmed.
And me, Graeme Garden.
Goodie, goodie, yum, yum.
Tonight I wish to tell you about turgonitis, a little known but very nasty disease.
Now we are the Goodies. Yes, we know that. And we are going to do good.
And so I thought of putting a little generator, dynamo, on the back of the wrist.
Come on, everybody, it's gibbon time!
That's a load of rubbish, said the little boy. I wonder if anyone spotted the deliberate mistake there.
Goodies, how you do? We just been down to the zoo.
Hang on, Bill, I don't need a key to open this. You stand back.
Yes.
Turn around.
Yes.
Bend over.
Beg your pardon?
1, 2, 3.
So this month we're doing something a bit different because Samira and I have been welcomed into the home of comedian, actor, author, artist, television presenter, writer, master of panel shows, medical doctor, and above all, perhaps, Goodie, Graeme Garden, to look back at his life in television.
Thank you so much for inviting us in, Graeme. And can I ask, as we're talking about going through the square window, what, if anything, were you watching on television growing up? In the 50s?
Yes, obviously television wasn't around when I was a really little kid. We listened to the radio a lot. And when television came, it was in the early 50s, and like everyone else, we sort of got television around about the time of the coronation. And that was the big event to go and buy your television set to see. So in the early days, I was watching kids' programs and things like Whirligig, which I see a blank look on your eyes.
I've heard of it. I've heard of Muffin the Mule.
Muffin the Mule was there, yes, and all that sort of thing, which they were very good fun, but there was children's hours was literally an hour. And then television closed down again until a bit later on when the news came on. So it was strange days because our television now, which is 24 hours a day really, was totally unheard of then.
Yeah. And I just wondered, was there a sense early on of you having some fascination with what television could do? Or was it complete coincidence that you ended up making a career in it?
In a way, yeah. It was radio that was really my first big interest because I loved listening to radio and loved all the comedy programs, especially, you know. Back in the day, there was Much Binding in the Marsh and Itmar and things like that, which I just caught at the end of the war. Mm. In fact, when my dad came back from the war, he'd liberated some microphones and bits of sound equipment.
Oh, really?
And I rigged up a microphone in my bedroom leading down to the back of the radio in the kitchen. And I used to broadcast from the bedroom and then rush down and ask my mother how it went.
What were the shows you're doing? And I also wonder, because you're a really gifted mimic, was that part of your shtick as a kid?
That came later when we got a tape recorder.
Right.
And I used to do voices. That was... so it was sound that was my first thing, and I really wanted to kind of climb into the radio set and be part of that world. And when the opportunity came up later, I jumped at it.
And yet you went off to university to be a medic. You did medicine.
I went to be a doctor, yeah. And when I was at Cambridge, I fell in with the Footlights, and eventually became president there. And then after that, I went to King's College Hospital in London to carry on my medical studies.
What kind of a doctor were you planning to be?
I don't know. A happy one would have been good, but I didn't see many of those around. So while I was at King's as a student, Humphrey Barclay came up and said, the Footlights show that he had done with John Cleese and Tim Brooke Taylor and Bill Oddie and people had been very successful and travelled around and went to America, went on Broadway for a few performances, and the BBC wanted to make it into a radio series, and Graham Chapman was just starting his medical work as a doctor, and so he was dropping out of the cast, and they asked if I would join the cast for the radio series and help to write and do some voices for it, because some thought that I would be good on the voice side.
And this is the show that became?
And it became I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again.
This is I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again. Approximately 1,800 seconds of japes, pranks and idiosyncrasies, written by a number of videos and featuring several syncrasies.
Which is, of course, still repeated on Radio 4 Extra.
It is.
It's endured, hasn't it?
I know. And I'll probably get almost a penny a go.
Well, it feels like you're pioneering a new format, which has set a template for all kinds of comedy ever since. What were the ideas behind it? You mentioned you being brought in partly because of your mimicry, but there's more to it than that.
Well, I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again was really a sketch show in the Round the Horn and things like that were going on at the same time. Ours was a bit more anarchic and a bit sillier, and also had the advantage of Bill's songs in it.
Oh, she was just 16, she was tall and lean, she was as ugly as could be. But I'm ugly too, so she had to do, she was the only girl for me.
Most comedy series had a song or two in them, but they were straight songs by a group or a band that would come in. We were the only one that produced our own music, and some very funny comic songs. I couldn't believe how Bill wrote 2 a week. I mean, it's extraordinary.
That's something that really comes up with the Goodies later. I just want to take you back a bit to being part of this really interesting generation at Oxford and at Cambridge in the early 60s, who led the so-called satire boom. So you've got the Beyond the Fringe crowd coming out of Oxford, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. You've got the Cambridge group, including yourselves and some of the Monty Python gang. And I know when you were president of Footlights, you pushed for women to be allowed to join, but that didn't happen until I think Eric Idle did, when women like Jermaine Greer arrived. Tell me a bit about the atmosphere. Was there something in the water? What was going on?
I don't know. It was very weird, because the group of people that were in the Footlights who then went on to become professionals, none of them, I think, had any ambition to go into show business at all when they went to Cambridge. We all had, careers in law and teaching and medicine and things like that lined up in our sights, and then got diverted into comedy. And I think it was only because we went across mob-handed. Any individual one of us would probably not have put their toe in the water, but because we were a group, we all went together and worked in various shows in various combinations. The last 1948 show, Tim was in that with John Cleese, and then Tim split up and did a show with me and with Bill, and that was a sketch show which eventually turned into the Goodies.
So interesting, the kind of different player formats. Well, Graeme, you've done some really interesting research into what's the early Graeme Garden TV breakthrough, haven't you?
Yeah, so there's twice a fortnight, which nothing exists now, does it?
This was 1967, a BBC One show.
Yeah, have you ever seen it?
No, well, no.
Good.
Alas. So you don't think it's your finest work?
Not our finest work. It was an attempt to do I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again on television.
Yeah.
And it had some of the same sketches. It's one redeeming factor was it had filmed inserts made by Terry Jones and Mike Palin, which we all took part in, and I think those survived because I think Terry Jones kept them. But it was produced by Tony Palmer, who's now a distinguished
it's an opera director and documentary maker, yes,
and makes the life stories of composers and people like that. But he was at Cambridge with us and thought that he would make it into a comedy show, and didn't really know how comedy worked. And thought the thing about I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again on radio was the audience was like a football crowd and would make their feelings known and join in. And if we told them a phrase was a running gag, if we said this is the catchphrase for the series, they would cheer every time you said it, And so he used to give them a glass of wine. when they arrived in the TV show, which wasn't entirely helpful.
What was the geographical situation in terms of where everybody was? Because people are writing together.
Yeah.
So how did that work? Are you going around to people's houses, or what was the setup?
Yes. I don't think any of us were ever in the writers' room at the BBC where they used to get together to do some of the topical shows. But Bill and I were both by then. Well, when we were doing I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, and I started doing that as a medical student, I was in South London and Camberwell, and Bill was up in Hampstead, and so we used to try and get together as best we could. We mostly would, in the radio show, I think, wrote separately. Yeah. So it would be, we'd take turns. I'll write the first half this week, you write the second half. That worked all right, except when I was doing my midwifery down in Plymouth. I was on call 24 hours a day and didn't get a lot of sleep and didn't really... I wasn't appearing in the show, obviously, at the time, and the writing had to be, I think, rewritten by Bill.
I have this image of future episodes of the Goodies and the inspiration for, like, the episode War Babies, where the woman has the giant, but she gives birth to a giant life-sized Bill Oddie. Yeah. And then maybe it all has its origins in some of your medical training,
That was probably in my dreams at the time. It was a very busy time in Plymouth, because 9 months before, the Ark Royal had been in port.
So we talk about Broaden Your Mind in 1968, and you mentioned the film sketches, and those are what exists now from that show.
This was BBC Two, 1968.
Yeah, and produced by Sidney Lotterby.
Ex-Queen Gladys and her husband, Prince Fred of East Ham, claimed to be direct heirs to the throne of England. However, between them and the crown stand 1,102,570 legitimate heirs to the throne.
And was that more you and Tim writing that?
Tim and I developed it, and we wrote it together. Bill came into the second series really full time, and it was all right. It was going sort of towards the anarchism that Python eventually had, but Python was starting up at the same time, and there were a lot of other sketch shows going on. And we thought, well, we're going to get lost in the scramble here.
What I'm wondering about is, you mentioned also with Twice a Fortnight, and I wonder if this has turned into something instructive in your career, are these filmed sequences, which, looking at them now, presumably were often just shot with no sound. And because you would overcrank, and this happens a lot in the Goodies as well. I wondered if you found a kind of a comedic style in that, because that continues through the Goodies, doesn't it?
Well, we did like, we were big fans of silent movies and, Buster Keaton and people like that. And so it was fun to do the kind of silent comedy that they did.
So you essentially are speeding it up, the visual run of it.
And also... film sound played to an audience never quite sort of necessarily, you didn't have the same rapport with an audience that you had when you were live in a studio. Yeah. So we were quite sparing about how much sound we used, and also it was that much more difficult because aeroplanes flew over and things like that.
Well, I wondered if that part of that was a pragmatism then.
Yeah, quite a bit of it was.
Yeah.
There's an interesting moment between something like Broaden Your Mind and the Goodies, which is LWT's Doctor in the House, which was a sitcom. Was it created out of the comedy books and the films that had begun back in the 50s?
Yes.
And you were writing on it with people like with Bill Oddie. And was Graeme Chapman also writing for it, I think?
The first episode was written by John Cleese and Graeme Chapman, and then they couldn't do any more because they had other commitments. And Humphrey, was it John Cleese? One of them anyway, phoned me up and said, could you take on this series? You're a doctor.
Yeah, it's an interesting series because I remember watching it. It was very popular, and there was that sense of it being very much of its time. Sort of bunch of male doctors.
They were very laddish.
Very laddish, I think is the word. George Layton was one of the actors in it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What did you learn from writing for a sitcom like that? And what was the experience like?
It was interesting because we found that we could actually tame our comedic impulses to write something that could actually happen and was within the bounds of possibility. We really gave ourselves a carte blanche on it because quite a lot of the characters had been changed by John and Graeme anyway. The books were well known, the films were well known, and we thought, well, if we start by doing the plots from the books and the films, anyone who that is new to must have been living in a cave, and they won't have a television set anyway. So we thought we'd better, just start with a clean slate and take the spirit.
Take a little good advice. Try a trip to paradise. You got it on your mind. You can't pretend you don't. It's whatever turns you on. Goodies.
So let's talk about The Goodies, which is this long-running comedy series which became a huge international smash hit, won major prizes, and it developed a cult following, which is interesting for something which had such huge ratings. Places like Australia and New Zealand, I think you've done tours there over the years because of the enduring love for that show. Three men who do anything, anytime, anywhere, often wildly surreal, with a lot of visual slapstick humour. And I do remember the news story when someone died laughing watching an episode, which became a very happy and finally in its own right. What was the original pitch, and how had you and Tim and Bill kind of found each other and knew you had a format potential?
We'd been doing Broaden Your Mind. We'd done 2 series of Broaden Your Mind, and the BBC commissioned a 3rd series. We didn't want to do it anymore because, as I said, the sketch show market was getting very overcrowded, and you were lost in the melee. So we went to see Michael Mills, who is the head of comedy, and said we'd rather do something different. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And we said, well, we'd like to do a sort of complete story, like a sitcom, but it's 3 blokes who do anything, anytime, anywhere. And that was it, really. That was our pitch. He said, well, I get that idea on my desk every week. He said, along with the German version of Dad's Army. But he said, if anyone could do it, I think you can. So, have a series. So he gave us a series of 7 shows, and we went off and made them.
This was 1970, the first series began, and it ran till 1980 on BBC One, and then 1 series on LWT.
Yes, it was made by BBC Two and then shown repeated on BBC One, which was interesting, and it was quite jealously guarded by BBC Two. They wouldn't let it go. The original director was John Howard Davies, and Jim Franklin was the film editor, which he was extremely good at and was well known in the business as somebody with... He had a great feel for comedy. And in the 2nd series, he was the actual director, producer. Yeah.
And what did they, because you're forming a show in the 1st series, what did they contribute, do you think, to the Goodies?
An open mouth, I think. I'm not sure they quite understood what was going on, because we didn't really either. And it was very odd making the 1st series. Odd making a 1st series of anything, because if you're filming on location, nobody knows in the company who you are or what the setup is and what the background of the thing that you're filming. And then you take it into the studio and you do it in front of an audience who have no idea about the programme either. They're seeing it for the first time. At every episode of the 1st series, you have an audience seeing it for the first time. In the 2nd series, people will have seen it go out, and so they'll have some idea of what to expect and will want to be there. The 1st series, you sort of get the coach parties and people just written and say, could we have 10 tickets?
And with the 1st series, it feels to me, I think one of your favourite episodes you've mentioned is Radio Goodies, and I feel that you really established the format of the Goodies, because that's the first one where one of the central trio turns bad.
How would I create a new world when I'm surrounded by fools? He's flipped, he's gone. Now he's completely gone.
Stand aside, henchman. This is your leader speaking. Here is an important announcement. It has been put about by backsliding revisionary paper hyenas that the Goodies Pirate Post Office is closing down. This is a lie!
Yes, we only did it sort of once or twice in the early days, and it was partly because we actually rather liked the idea of having guest stars on, people that we admired and liked to meet, apart from anything else. And also we thought, if it's a story, we need somebody to come and set it up, and we need a client, so the client might as well be somebody important.
Yeah.
Later on, we thought, well, wait a minute, we write these things and the client does all the funny jokes and we stand there in a line responding to them.
Yes, well, especially that ballroom dancing episode with Joan Sims and Gene Whitfield as the two gangsters.
Yes.
And they really owned that show.
Oh, absolutely, they took it over, but they were in good hands.
So what the idea was to sort of
later,
bring it back to you.
Yeah, later on we followed that, the template of the Radio Goodies one, where one of us, quite often me, went mad and had to be constrained by the others, or possibly even defeated by the other two, and put right.
And the second series is commissioned before the first series has even finished airing, albeit the BBC asked that Bill's sherbet trips a drop, where he would imbibe some sherbet, wouldn't he, and then have an epiphany. But producer John Howard Davis wrote to Bill congratulating him on the success, but he asserted in his letter that episodes that weren't satirical were the funniest. This is what he said, and asking for more women in the second series.
Yes. I didn't know about that letter, but
he was wrong, wasn't he, about the satire aspect, I think?
He was quite wrong about both things. Well, we did have plenty of women in the show eventually.
We talked about this when I interviewed Graeme at the Slapstick Festival over the last couple of years, about these strong women who I do think there was more casual sexism in the first couple of years, but there were always strong women. So you've got Beryl Reid as the sort of Desiree Carthorse, the sort of Mary Whitehouse type in the gender education episode.
And there is the script I've written for you. It's called How to Make Babies by Doing Dirty Things.
I'm interested in how the process of writing and filming worked with some of these ideas, because some of them did feel very topical responses to news stories, like, the Satanism one. That was very much in the tabloids at the time, wasn't it?
Yes, we would, before every series we had what we called the panorama meeting, when we'd sit down and go through a list of topics that we thought we could make some jokes about. And quite often there were things that were either happening in the world, political things, social changes, movies that were popular, and we'd sort of pick one and think, well, how can we match that with Kung Fu is very popular, how can we catch... I know, we always wanted to do a thing about northern people, because we all come from the north.
So this is Kung Fu Capers.
So we'll have a Kung Fu,
the Lancastrian martial art.
That's it, yes, Eki Thump.
I journeyed for to seek out true enlightenment. Many days till I came to the mystic east. Fish and chip shop in Rochdale High School. Nip round back, and there we'll find the gateway to age-old Lancastrian martial art of Eki Thump.
Which, it's jumping ahead a bit, but 1975, which is the year that Kung Fu Capers is one of those episodes, does feel like the absolute peak of the Goodies, where there's such a run of episodes which are really loved, and they really hold up. And you won awards at Montreux. The Kitten Kong, that's a favourite, isn't it?
Kitten Kong went to Montreux. We got the silver rose with that, which was a remake of the version that we broadcast. That was the top, and round about then the pop music thing started up as well.
Yes, well, let's talk about that. You become regulars on Top of the Pops. We have a lovely clip we were watching, Graeme, Kibble-White and I, of you performing the Funky Gibbon on Lulu's show.
That I really can't imagine anything at Montreux being funnier than that, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
But I really wish you the best of luck. And now, can we all hear your latest record?
Try and stop us.
All right.
Bill?
But I just wonder, in the era of Bowie and glam rock, what did other acts make of the Goodies when you did turn up on Top of the Pops?
They were quite friendly.
Because it felt like you were undermining the very premise of pop music in a way. People always said Bill was a frustrated rock star, and Bill said, but I've been in Top of the Pops and been in the charts. I'm a successful rock star. Well, the other thing which we have to talk about is the comedy songwriting that Bill Oddie brought, because I remember talking to him about it before, but you were so used to the idea of the comedy saxophone and a certain kind of soundtrack. And actually, with every Goodies episode, there is a song of a different genre. There are lyrics to it. It's somehow a commentary on the action, especially for those visual films. How did that come about?
He used to go away and write them. During the week of rehearsal, he would record them with the band in the sort of evenings. And got, the best session players available. I mean, they weren't just, anybody. They were really serious people. And that's how the music got to sound so good. I mean, it does sound good.
Yeah.
And were you and Tim didn't have, I mean, other than singing occasionally, but you didn't actively contribute, did you, to that? Was that almost a fait accompli on Bill's part?
That was a fait accompli on Bill's part. We didn't have a meeting about, what the song should be about. We just left it up to Bill.
And what about the personae of your screen versions? The Graeme, the Tim, and the Bill that we see. I mean, we were watching, that episode Euthanasia, which is one of my favourites from 1977, when you're all trapped and you're all waiting the end of the world, and Tim's wearing the Union Jack waistcoat. And it feels like the characters are fully developed, and we know who they are by then. How did they come? Did you know that that's how they were going to be? That Tim was going to be this sort of rather sweet,
sort of,
sort of nationalist. That's the right word. Patriotic.
Well, Tim had a hyphen, so that definition, by definition, he had long floppy hair too. So he had to be the sort of slightly posh one, and being the posh one had to be the coward. I had to be the reckless scientist.
Well, boffin, potential evil genius.
Yes, quite. And Bill was just a scruffy little oik, really. He was always, the grumpy one.
So let's talk about 1972, after the second series of the Goodies. And I have to say, by this point, you're appearing as comic strip characters in Core Comic, which that's exciting. But Engelbert and the Young Generation, which always seems like it's such a strange thing to have happened. What was the story behind that? How did you end up as being part of that show?
A lot of people have written in to ask, how the Goodies run so fast? Well, they have a pretty unusual contract with the BBC. They get paid by the mile. But they have to put in a lot of hard work and a lot of hard training, as you will see.
I don't know. I mean, they just came to us and said, Engelbert's doing a show, and we said, yeah. And they said, we want you to be part of it, and just come on and do a little comedy sketch each week. We said, well, with Engelbert, and they said, oh, no. You'll be totally separate. So he was, apart from introducing us, he didn't really take much part in things. He came along to the rehearsal rooms, and in the rehearsal room they have long metal poles that indicate where the walls would be.
Oh, yes.
And Bill knocked one over, which hit him on the head, which we thought, well, there's the headline,
And, I mean, Engelbert Humperdinck, a mainstream crooner, and this was a kind of a mainstream variety show. Were the three of you thinking about what it might do for your careers, or are you just thinking, well, here's a gig and we'll just do it?
We just thought, here's a gig, and we thought, this is bizarre. If anybody says, what are you doing in the Engelbert show, we'll say, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It didn't strike us as being going to do us any harm, or indeed do him any good.
Well, it's something interesting about that moment in television in the early 70s, where you have quite subversive, rule-breaking comedy like the Goodies and like things like Monty Python, and they coexist quite happily alongside very traditional variety entertainment, and sometimes members from one appear in the other. And I was thinking that about, all the newsreaders who used to appear on the Goodies, really making fools of themselves and things. And yet, I think if young people who've never watched the Goodies would hear that now, they'd be very surprised, because you have this idea of this deference about serious news journalism. How did that strike you at the time? Was it just the way it was, that television was more relaxed about breaking these boundaries?
Yes. I mean, I think we approached people like Patrick Moore and Michael Barrett.
Yes,
you know,
nationwide presenter.
And I think they probably needed to get permission, or Mike Barrett probably needed to get permission from his boss, who would say, yeah, go on.
He was on all the time.
It's a laugh.
Yeah, he was almost a fourth Goodie.
Yeah, he was like that punk episode where he's got the safety pins and he's
He was terribly good because he played it straight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you employ these people not to come on and try to be funny. You employ them to come on and be themselves and be straight,
well,
with a pin through their nose.
David Dimbleby in an election programme where he gets into a sleeping bag, and that was based on something that had happened, wasn't it? Was it that he'd been eating a Mars bar?
It was in the middle of an election broadcast, and his sugar was getting a bit low at about 2:00 in the morning or something. So he bit into a Mars bar, and the camera went on him, and he was caught with a mouthful. This was a huge sort of story, and so when he appeared on the Goodies, we had him tucking in a 3-course meal and getting into bed
with his pyjamas on. Yeah.
The beanstalk is apparently growing all over the country at quite a time.
We apologise for the loss of your newsreader.
The Goodies and the Beanstalk from series 4, was that your first kind of? I mean, there had been Kit and Kong, but this was a Christmas episode, wasn't it? Yeah. And so was there a bit more production behind that? Do you remember? What were you asked for?
Yeah, it was, and that was made all on film, and it was made as a film. It was a special, so it was going to be an hour-long, event rather than just an episode. And we thought, well, Christmas, I mean, we don't want it too Christmassy because you'll never get it repeated, which is always the worry. So we did a pantomime, basically, and it was, the Giant and the Goodies and the Beanstalk. And it was good fun to do, except when I think the castle got stolen one night. The castle was a small thing stuck on top of a hill, and it got disappeared. Bits of Beanstalk went missing.
Well, the special effects we have to talk about, because a lot of them are analogue effects, and a lot of them are old silent film effects, sort of 2D cutouts of things, whether they fall on top of you and you're in the gap, or they're sort of they're sets that you run in front of. There's a real knowing play, isn't there, with slapstick effects? I read somewhere that you worked with people who had worked on silent films. Is that true?
The effects in the Goodies are amusing, partly because they're sort of quite transparent as what's going on. That's a dummy that falls out of the top floor of the building, and then Tim pretends to
jump up.
To jump up. But it's all that was available. I mean, we didn't have computer-generated stuff, which I think would have killed the comedy, to be honest.
Although you did have some early sort of blue screen work, didn't you?
We had blue screen, then we pioneered the blue screen, yes, because it was the early days of colour. I mean, colour television had only just come in. Broaden Your Mind, I think, was the first comedy show to do colour. I'm not sure.
Is it right that then the three of you also were part of the production meetings, and so you're almost of budgeting your jokes based around how much of the effects would be?
When we wrote an effect and something happened, we always figured out a way to do it first, and then put it up to the people. And the professionals will say, that's very good, but we've got a better way of doing it. But we never put anything in that we thought was impossible.
I remember with the Kung Fu Capers episode, the flat cloth caps that they wear, and then the one that the Grand Master wears is the size of a table. Yeah. And you could send them back to costume and say, no, we need it bigger, and they would do it because that was all within the budget.
It was all within the BBC, and we knew the people involved, and we would sit down, hopefully avoiding things like that at the table to begin with, and we'd say, we want a giant boot, and the costume lady would say, what, a size 14? And we said, no, a boot that's big enough for an entire person to get into.
And you must have loved making them.
So, that's his department then, and they had great fun.
What about things like flying on wires? There's the scene again in Kung Fu Capers where all the the black puddings are magnetised, and they're all flying off.
Yeah.
Are they just been pulled on wires, or what's going on?
I can't remember. Yeah, probably on wires.
You can tell I watched this episode a lot.
And on fishing lines.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was one effect I was quite proud of, where Tim and I are running through a park, and we stop, and we come to a sort of zebra crossing. We're standing there looking puzzled, and a train comes and mows us down. And we thought, well, you can't. There aren't many trains that go through parks and things like that. So I said, why don't we get a flat and paint it to look like the side of a train, stick it on the side of a lorry, drive the lorry through, and then cut to a real train whizzing past. And they did that, and it looked quite good, actually.
It looked great.
So before we came down to visit you today, we sent over some video stuff of bits and bobs of telly that you've done. And one of the things on there is a show from 1974 called The Very Idea, which was a BBC Two show looking at the creation of ideas, hosted by Edward de Bono and Professor Eric Laithwaite.
The most important thing, and certainly the most fascinating thing that can happen in anyone's mind, is an idea. We're going to look at how people tackle problems, how they do their thinking. How would you think about a problem which someone put in your lap? How would you come up with an idea? We're going to look at that, and in order to do it, we've invented a sort of thinking game in which we ask people along to the studio and get them to do their thinking in front of us.
I mean, it's quite a highbrow show. What do you remember about recording that? But also, why did you want to be on something like that? Did you actually want to go on something that kind of showed your academic side?
It sounded like a good lark. I mean, I know why I was there. It was to do the sort of silly versions of whatever it was that they were talking about. I remember one thing I suggested was that police cars drive along with all the lights flashing and sirens going. The car you want to identify is the burglar or the robber or the wrongdoer. So every car should have the lights and things which can be switched on remotely by the police so that you know which one's the bad guy. But, it was fun to do and to meet people like Eric Laithwaite, who's extraordinary, and Brian Aldiss, the science fiction writer.
Really?
He did a few episodes too. So between us, it was quite an interesting little think tank.
Well, other shows you did as well, like The Adventure Game, which is, again, a much-loved show. That was sort of early evening, so children watched it, but adults watched it. It was a kind of puzzle room thing.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Adventure Game. Well, today's visitors are just arriving here at the studio. There's Nicholas Hammond, the maestro of the Magic Cube, the well-known Goodie and star whose turn it is to be challenged, Graeme Garden, and the Play School star presenter, actress and part-time potterer, Carol Cho.
I watched the episode that you were on, and you really apply yourself quite seriously.
By
the number of...
We haven't struck the clock yet.
sides to them.
Well, how many shapes are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different shapes.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colours.
Well, 5 different colours.
So, nothing ventured. Should we try?
You just seem to you seem to switch into a mode where you are the boffin who will solve this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do find it quite interesting solving that kind of puzzle, and they were quite good puzzles. Well, one of them was a clue in a crossword that was lying there, and it happened to be in the Guardian crossword I'd actually done 2 days before. So, and I think that was when they just decided I must be a traitor.
Do you? What were you briefed for the Adventure Game? Because presumably the idea is they don't tell you anything. Do they just tell you you're going to come up and perform something?
They throw you in.
It's quite demanding, isn't it? I just think if you would try and do the Adventure Game now, it would depend on what celebrities you got, but I think a lot of people would really struggle to get anywhere with that game.
So the Crystal Maze kind of took it over. Yeah.
Was this in BBC Bristol? I get the sense that you did quite a few bits and bobs for BBC Bristol over the years.
Yeah.
So after The Very Idea, we're back to the Goodies Series 5 in 1975, which is, we're sort of talking about as perhaps the seminal series. But what I find interesting is that was the one that was delayed by a BBC strike. And actually, from what I've read, that you were in the studio sort of days before transmission, which sounds very fraught to me. Does that ring any bells with you?
Yes, it was. the series was literally, I think, about to be recorded, and the machinery being such in terms of what was going on at the BBC, the strike happened, so they couldn't make the programmes, but they had to build the sets and put them in just in case, and then take them out and destroy them, and so all the sets were built and put into the studio and then taken out, and then the next set. I mean, it was a weird time. And I think it was nearly a year later that we actually got to make the series.
Wow.
And it was days before before it was broadcast. And there was one episode which had a fake Princess Anne in it, and she was about to give birth. And they were waiting in the edit suite to take out the joke just in case anything went wrong, because it was going out 2 days later.
And there were no issues with compliance, because now everything at the BBC that touches on the royal family has to go up and be referred and discussed. There wasn't anything like that.
Well, I think the royal family was a little bit more well behaved in those days.
Yeah. And what went right though with that series? Why do you feel it was perhaps the most successful one, considering the circumstances? Was there something about the fact that you'd had to sit on these ideas for a year? Were you tweaking, or...?
I think one of the things, I think the South African episode was in there somewhere, because the BBC made us rewrite it, as they said it wasn't funny enough.
This was the episode about apartheid.
And so we rewrote it and put some more jokes in.
But have you ever thought of emigrating to South Africa? Land of opportunity, because believe you me, South Africa is simply crying out for immigrants just like you.
They said it was unfair to the South African police at one point. I don't know that it helped us, the strike or any of that.
When ratings went up to 10 million, wasn't it, for this run?
I think it was about, just a time that... by that time, we'd sort of settled into the understanding ourselves how the series worked. Because to begin with, we'd, just flying blind, and we knew what to put into it and what people, and also people were becoming familiar too, and would know that if I go mad, they would think, oh yeah, there he goes again.
The following year, so for Series 6, again, just looking at paperwork and reading, this is a year where there seemed to be wrangles over money, and that actually astonished me, and forgive me if this is vulgar for me to say, but Tim was actually being paid more than you and Bill because he had kind of notched up more TV credits.
Yeah.
That seems a strange thing to me. Do you remember this?
I do, and we did have little niggles about about the payments, and Tim wanted more money for the writing, and we wanted as much as he'd got for the performing. But the BBC had their rules, and the more you do, the more they pay, or they did in those days. I don't know if it's quite the same, but it wasn't a real bother because we were all getting quite well paid.
And the other thing that year, the other sort of contractual thing, forgive me, is this is the year that Bill thought you should switch from Bradley Records to Island Records for the Goodies kind of musical output, and it's kind of slightly killed the Goodies in the charts after that.
I mean, Bradley Records was quite a sort of small organisation, and I don't know. That was a musical decision that I didn't feel I was really equipped to deal with. But it just amused me that we went to Island Records of all things.
Yeah,
it was a very cool thing to do.
Can I ask? Is it true that Steven Spielberg approached the Goodies about a film?
He did. He asked about. At some point, he made some query that came through to us. He didn't follow it up.
This would have been, about 77? Was it after Jaws?
And then he went and made
1941, the film that bombed,
And that was the end of his comedy interest, really.
And that year, Bob Spears joins the team, doesn't he? He starts directing your film sequences.
Yes.
And he's a director who would also work on Fawlty Towers, for example, and Ab Fab. Did that change anything about what what the sequences were like in Series 7?
Difficult to know that if Bob made big changes or not, because I think there was a sort of organic development of the show that was happening anyway, and whether to put it down to Bob Spears or not, I don't know. I enjoyed working with him, I must say, and I felt that he was very much on our wavelength, and also his comedy credentials are extraordinarily good. He'd done most of the big comedies.
Can I ask a bit about the legacy of the Goodies? Because the show has been so loved and it was repeated a lot. But one of the issues has been, there are episodes which have things like blackface, which are problematic now. How do you look back on that? And were any of them problematic at the time? I mean, for example, the South Africa episode.
I think that was a little problematic at the time. We didn't have any real grief about it from anyone. But yes, there are. I mean, blackface happened in satirical situations where, one of the shows at the time that was very popular was the Black and White Minstrels, which was bizarre.
I know. Well, my parents used to make me turn that off because I used to turn it off quite willingly because it was just so baffling. It felt like what you were doing in the Goodies was very different.
Yeah. Well, we were sending it up very much too,
Yeah.
and when we did. There was one episode where we did some blackface, and it was very much about the minstrels kind of idea. But I mean, I don't want to go back and sort of start editing the shows. I think they should stand up as they are, and that shows people what attitudes were, and at the time. Certainly, there was no malicious racist elements, I don't think.
No, not at all, I don't think.
We spoke about in our Christmas episode, Samira nominated Earth and Asia as her favourite ever Christmas programme.
One of the ones I had taped.
But it also kind of marks a bit of an endpoint for the Goodies for a while. You sort of go on a hiatus, and Bill goes off and does Saturday Banana, which is a children's show. Yeah. And you also do a children's show, which is Star Turn. With the kind of historic thing about the Goodies sometimes resisting being called a children's show because you weren't. But then again, children's telly did kind of make overtures quite a lot, didn't you? Ask Aspel was good to you as well. But
yeah.
What's your memories of doing Star Turn? This was a kind of a parlour game hosted by Bernard Cribbins, and there would be celebrities of the day.
We're going to do better this week because it's Ian Lavender.
Thank you.
And lovely Les Judd, big Les. And Michael Cochrane winging his way back to fame and fortune. You will do better, won't you, Ian, this time?
If you let us, yes.
What do you mean if I let you? It was your own
You're
silly
the one who
fault, really.
scores.
Now, you're losing already. Now, just stop it. Right, and on my left, the victorious captain, Graeme Goodie Garden. See on his left, Doctor Who's lovely assistant, Louise Jameson. And the news hound himself, John Craven. Right, there we are.
Doing things like charades.
It's not an easy one, this is. Not an easy one.
Radio programme.
6 words.
6 words. Ooh.
Yes, it's a beauty, isn't it? But he's a lovely mimer.
Doing the Ivor Notion stories.
Whereupon Ivor Notion had a notion.
Talk to me a bit about how that came together and why you wanted to do it, please.
We did it because we were offered the shows. And Star Turn I'd appeared on as a guest, and the producer, whose name I can't remember now, in Bristol.
It was Peter Charlton.
Peter, yes. Peter Charlton asked if I would be interested in taking over as a host for the series, and from Bernie Cribbins.
Hello. Well, the forecast says scattered showers with funny intervals, so it must be time for Star Turn.
So I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. It sounds like quite, not a lot of rehearsal involved, not a lot of work. I was used to doing the Goodies, which is a week's filming and then a week's rehearsal and then a recording, and going in and just doing a show like a panel game, that was appealing. And it was good fun to do, and also you get to meet a lot of interesting people too.
Well, the reason people feel so warm and nostalgic for shows of that era is because there is a natural warmth and a rapport with these people like Bernard Cribbins, like yourself, who are just interesting people to be around.
Yeah.
You're naturally funny, and you're kind of welcomed into the room in quite an informal way. You know, no one's dressed up super fancy.
No.
It is quite a simple game.
No, that was yes, that was it's good fun, and also the other Bristol show I did was Scoop.
Well, good evening and welcome again to Scoop, the programme on which, generally speaking, assorted journalists reveal their ignorance of the news. And I say generally speaking because the first person I must introduce to you is a newcomer to the panel, and he has no known connection with journalism whatsoever, save that he once met a man who'd once had a drink in a pub quite near Fleet Street. Ladies and gentlemen, the former editor of absolutely nothing worth mentioning at all and refugee from the Goodies, Graeme Garden.
Oh yes, that was like a newspaper story.
Yes, this was
Panel
hosted by Barry Norman. You did this in 1981, and it was kind of a proto Have I Got News for You in a way.
Sort of, yeah.
But watching it now, it doesn't feel like, I don't mean this as a slight, but it doesn't feel like everyone's gone in prepped with gags. It feels much more genuine. Is that true?
Graeme, are you listening to me?
Yes.
Why won't Charlie's aunt be seen in the States?
Why won't Charlie's aunt? I've got to justify my presence here. I was actually once the film critic for New Scientist. However...
boasting about that?
Not really, no. I don't know why I brought it up. Playing for time. Charlie's aunt.
Not be seen in the States?
Any reference to Prince Charles?
Ah, you're getting warm.
Ah.
It was a genuine quiz about the week,
Yeah.
about the week's news.
I think Derek Jameson was one of
Oh,
the...
Derek, yes, he was, yes.
The newspaper
Wonderful,
columnist.
Derek. I had a conversation with him. The only thing he talked about was money.
There's another show from 77 that fascinated me. And I hadn't heard of it until I started looking around, which is this programme called Tell Me More.
Did you know that there is more carbohydrate in this cornflakes packet than there is in the actual cornflakes? Do you know that?
No, Graeme, I didn't. Do tell me more.
With you and Nanette Newman. And it seems, I have to say, it seems an odd mix of things. You're sort of doing kind of science experiments and games with the audience and being the kind of resident boffin. And there are sort of items in this episode. There's a discussion about left-handedness, and she brings on Kenneth Williams.
I know we talk about the disadvantages, but have there ever been any advantages with being left-handed?
Well, ironically, with me there were enormous advantages because I wasn't an actor at first. My father has approved thoroughly of theatre, you see, and so I went into draftsmanship, and I went into a branch of draftsmanship where left-handedness was a great asset because I went into lithography, and in those days it wasn't rotogravure, it wasn't a round plate they printed from, it was flatbed, and consequently everything that was on the litho stone had to be in reverse.
And then there's a discussion about gardening, and she brings on Michael
Caine. Ladies and gentlemen, the Percy thrower of Peckham Rye, my friend Michael Caine. Now, Michael, I'm not exaggerating, am I? You are an obsessive gardener, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I think it kind of dates back to when I was a kid.
I mean, what are your memories of this? It seems such an odd programme to me.
It was, yeah. It was... I'm trying to remember what the name of the producer.
Well, so there was two producers, Johnny Downs and Roger Ordish.
Roger Ordish I'd known for ages, and Roger from the radio days, and Roger approached me and said he was doing a series with Nanette Newman. I think it was to fill in while Jim'll Fix It was off.
Because he produced that as well.
And he produced that, yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, just come on and do a bit. We'll devise some sort of inserts for you to do it, and then you and Nanette can have some, rapport. And so I had lunch with Nanette and him, and we all got on, and I thought, well, this could be quite fun to do.
Was it?
I think it was, yeah. I mean, the idea was it was a kind of a magazine program, and I was in a little box in the corner, one of those magazines.
Right.
No, it was a bit strange, I must say. I didn't really feel that it was a very worthwhile piece of work.
Well, I was interested about the possibility of doing more acting. So there's an episode of Yesminster.
Shoot. I mean...
Well, assassination hazards fall broadly into 4 categories. That's bullets, bombs, poisons, and so-called accidents. Of course, there's also gassing, throttling, stabbing, drowning, garrotting and ritual disemboweling, but they are relatively uncommon in the UK.
It's very interesting to see you in a purely fictional role. Did you want to do more? What do you remember about doing that episode?
I remember it had a very long speech with an awful lot of technical jargon in it, which I took some time to remember. But it was really good fun. They're lovely people, of course, to work with. No, it was good fun. Jonathan Lynn, who wrote or co-wrote the Yes Minister series, had directed me in a play that Tim Brooke-Taylor and I did in the West End. Jonathan directed it on tour because he was in charge of the Cambridge Theatre Company. And it was called The Unvarnished Truth, and ended up at the Phoenix Theatre in London, and ran there for about 9 months. So I'd started my kind of theatrical career, and I did quite a few plays for the Cambridge Theatre Company on stage, including Rattle of a Simple Man, which is where I met Emma.
Oh, your wife. How lovely.
Yeah. So I think Jonathan knew that I was sort of at least reliable as an actor by that stage.
Did you see yourself as an actor? Did you see yourself potentially as a jobbing actor, or were you a personality?
For a time, I was very much a jobbing actor, and the trouble is, the kind of theatre I enjoyed doing would be the sort of 6-month tours, and you just can't make a living doing that. Yeah. So I had to sort of give up thinking of being a jobbing actor and being something else instead, a writer.
Well, the medical training came in useful again, because I have very fond memories of watching Bodymatters. Where you used your medical expertise to help explain different issues. How did that show come about? And again, there's something quite sort of childlike friendly about, big models and sort of visualizations of the way things work.
Yeah.
There was a big slide, wasn't there, that Kenneth Williams came down?
Yeah, Kenneth Williams slid down a nose.
Based on his own nose, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Quite an eye-opener. Perhaps I should say nose-opener.
Oh, yeah. It came about because, again, I was approached and asked to do it because Alan Marion Davies...
Well, without a nose, what would Graeme rest his specs on?
...was quite well known as partly as an instant sunshine space player, but also he was a presenter of medical issues and was very much a working medic. Gillian Rice was a GP here in the Bristol area.
Well, pouring champagne's easy if you're the right way up.
And they approached me and said, we want to do a kind of a showbiz version of medicine, help people to understand things, and we're going to use big models and various devices and things to illustrate it.
Is it 1985 it started?
This is 1985, yeah.
I mean, we've got to talk about, there's an AIDS special episode, which is essentially Bodymatters. It's technically the QED documentary format from 1987.
Tomorrow at 9:30 on BBC One, QED presents your biological guide to AIDS.
In this week of programmes on AIDS, the Bodymatters team have got together to explain the basic science behind the disease.
Using models like this, we'll guide you through the biological facts of the AIDS virus and how it invades the body and hijacks crucial cells of the body's defence system.
That way we hope you'll be able to separate facts from fiction and make up your own mind as to whether you're at risk of catching or passing on the AIDS virus.
Which I feel looks like public service broadcasting of the highest order. You're dealing with a whole day of programming about AIDS, which is this huge anxiety at the time. Was there anxiety making it? Because it struck me, you get the tone just right with the programme. It's serious for an audience who may not know very much at all, but it's not scaremongering. What do you remember about that episode?
I remember going to do it, and we all took it very seriously, obviously, because there was this horrible epidemic was starting up. And I don't think anyone was tempted to make it funny or entertaining in that sense. I think we were all aware that we would be using the fact that we are welcomed as medical communicators by some people, to use that to an advantage of getting some important information across to them. I remember at one point there was one speech where I had to say that AIDS could not be transmitted by kissing. And I said, is that entirely true? If there was some lesion, split lip or something.
Yes.
And I said, because I really don't want to be the person that told people it was all right, and it turns out not to be.
So what happened?
So we cut that reference because it clearly was borderline dangerous. Yeah.
Good for you.
But you have to be careful what you associate yourself with in these situations.
And that sense when there was so much that wasn't known about AIDS, to actually have an instinct for where you felt there was a line here, and I need to be on the more cautious side of it.
On a lighter subject with Bodymatters, I had really strong memories, and this is in one of the clips I dug up just coincidentally, of the experiment where you have a woman wearing a pair of glasses that inverts her vision, and she wears it for a week, and then we get a sense of what that does neurologically to her, because her brain kind of rewires.
After a whole week wearing upside-down glasses, Sarah, would you like to take them off now? And how does the world look?
Incredible.
Yes? Well, come with me. Come with me.
So there was a lot of really interesting kind of R&D behind the show, wasn't there? And proper interesting experiments.
Yeah, there was. There was a girl who didn't wash her hair for 3 months, I think. And
there was a big idea about, does hair self-clean? Is that what it was about?
And they said, just sniff her hair and see what it's like. I thought, it's going to smell like a sheep. No, perfectly nice.
Really?
I mean, either she was washing her hair secretly, or else it was indeed self-cleaning.
And did it please you that you were using some of your degree on telly, but also that this is good public service television?
Yeah, and it was quite nice to be doing that. Yeah, and I'd over the years had kept sort of in touch with medical journalism, I suppose, and had written the odd thing for New Scientist, and I used to work for a magazine called World Medicine, which was quite a light kind of medical magazine, not like the Lancet or the BMJ. It was much more user friendly. So yeah, it was always good to sort of keep in touch with things and at least know roughly how to pronounce some of the words.
And let's jump to 1980, which is the last BBC series of The Goodies. It has, for me, the finest line ever from The Goodies, which is,
"Don't cry for me, Margent."
There's a Thatcher parody, but also what I'm interested in is in the episode Animals, Mel Smith is a guest, and he's very much, this is the next generation of comics coming in. Clearly the Goodies were kind of able to sort of straddle the comedic generations. Is that fair to say?
I think so, yeah. And I think, we certainly, shows like I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue on the radio, where we would have guest stars on. They tended to come from the newer generations, obviously. And that was always very happy to mingle. And I think we were all respected as part of the same organic process that comedy was going through.
And do you think the fact that The Goodies was so much its own thing gave it an endurance as well, that it wasn't particularly fashionable or overtly fashionable?
It's had an extraordinary endurance, because it's still a question in quizzes, although it hasn't actually been broadcast by the BBC for years. It was never really repeated.
No.
It made more of an impact than I thought at the time, really.
Well, people raise their children on it. I will confess I'm one of those. And my daughter, when she was in Brownies, they had to do a little artwork about their favourite show, and her favourite show was The Goodies, and even Brownell hadn't heard of it. She was too young. But she was convinced that Bill Oddie's real name was Ecky Thump. I've had disabused of this.
No, that's right. In Australia, of course, they showed it every night of the week, which is why the Australians have such fond memories and such enthusiasm for The Goodies.
Oh, speaking of enthusiasm for The Goodies, I've got to ask you about Mary Whitehouse, who listeners of the podcast will know that I've read Mary Whitehouse's diaries. And there is the whole episode, of course, Gender Education in the early years with Beryl Reid, very much parodying the idea of this this campaigner, and the idea of sex and violence of television turning people violent. But she was a fan of the show, wasn't she? I mean, I think you were the one who told me there was a log for her National Viewer and Listener Association that people used to log programmes. And I've got it here, the log for the Goodies, Saturday Night Grease, 1980, the 21st of January. Although the return of the series was appreciated and the individual programme found to be very funny, it was too sexually orientated. There were 5 acts of silly violence, much pushing and hitting, which seemed to register no effect of hurt. There were 8 instances of sexual humour, e.g. Rod Stewart was seen wearing a sock on his nose. It was insinuated that the sock might fit something else. Tim Brooke Taylor was seen undressing, then dressing, mocking John Travolta in an exceedingly tight pair of underpants with a distinctive carrot motif on the front. There was successive zipping and unzipping of his trousers. But they did say it was funny.
Yes. Well, after the first series, we all had a little party, and John Howard Davies got up and said, "Have some news to break some news to you." After the first episode went out, he got a message from Mary Whitehouse saying congratulations and how much she'd enjoyed it. And that was the very first episode of The Goodies.
Can we talk then about the move from the BBC? I think Tim has always said that he was never keen on the idea of going to LWT, but you and Bill wanted to because the Beeb just weren't committing to you, were they, for a new run, because they were putting money into Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yeah, they put money into Hitchhiker's Guide, and because I mean, this is where what we liked about the BBC came back to bite us, really, because everything was in-house, which meant that, of course, the facilities were limited, and they couldn't run Doctor Who, The Goodies, and Hitchhiker's Guide in the special effects department all in the same time, and with that, with their budget being what it was. And so they made Hitchhiker's Guide, and then they said to us, we can't commission another series of The Goodies until we know if we're going to commission a second series of Hitchhiker's Guide, right. Which they in fact never did in the end. And we just thought, well, we've got a year to wait doing nothing. We've got to do something. The obvious thing to do is do The Goodies. And at that time, a chap from ITV turned up, offering to stuff our mouths with gold. It made it all sound very good, and they made the shows, and I think they made quite good shows.
They did. I remember watching them on transmission and being excited. But
they're terribly expensive. Yeah. And Michael Grade was the head of London Weekend. Yeah. Looked at them and looked at the budget and said, well, all right, they're on a good wage. We'll pay them off for the 3 series we've commissioned them for, but we won't make them.
And what this seems a familiar BBC story in a way, that after a while the BBC gets a hit, but then starts to almost treat it slightly disdainfully, because it seems to me that one would think, well, no, why aren't we prioritising another Goodies series, because we know people want it and it gets great numbers. But is that just the way it always is, do you think?
I don't know. I think it was the way it was, and probably the way that, and I think Michael Mills had moved on since then. I'm not sure who was the head of comedy at that time, but they may just have lost interest in, this was yesterday's thing. It's never been a gigantic hit, we'll see. Hitchhiker's Guide should be tremendous.
There's slight tweaks to The Goodies when it goes to LWT. I think Bill redoes the theme music.
Goody, goody, yum, yum. You need to help him, help. Oh, you know we'll understand. Oh, we'll be right at the end. Everyone needs a friend. Goody, goody, goody. We'll show you definitely.
Were you all thinking, is that just because you had to, or were you all thinking, let's give it a slight fresh start here?
Oh, I think just give it a fresh start, because it would be weird to run exactly the same sort of same look and the same sound.
And oddly, it turns out that the last thing that you recorded ever as the Goodies, which is Snow White 2, is the first thing that ITV shows. That was a Christmas special.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the pantomime, they bring you.
So there was no, well, it's a wrap on the series. It was just, okay, we'll see you next year, and then it doesn't happen?
No, I don't think there was. There was an end of series or end of recording party.
Yeah.
We all ran down and had a drink somewhere. But there was no series of wrapping the whole series, no.
And is it true, I don't know if this is the case, that there was talk in the mid-80s of the new Goodies, a series potentially using old scripts with BBC Children's talent in there?
Yes, I heard something about that, but never really came to anything.
Right. And then talking about children's TV.
This is 29 Acacia Road, and this is Eric, the schoolboy who leads an amazing double life. For when Eric eats a banana, an amazing transformation occurs. Eric is Bananaman.
Bananaman. It was kind of seminal, I think. So this was the three of you voicing the hero, and it was based on the Nutty Comics character, directed and produced by Terry Ward and Trevor Bond. And I read a thing that Ward said about the recording sessions. He said, we do a whole morning of recording scripts, and at the end they're lying on the floor, this is the three of you, with tears running from their eyes. Their ad-libs and little changes add a tremendous amount to the production. Is that how you remember it?
I don't think it was that bad. No, we did have a laugh. It was good fun to do. Remember that series particularly because I had to have a medical before we did the recordings.
Really?
Well, I said, what? I said, yeah, got to go upstairs and see the doctor. And I went up and saw the doctor, who was about 90 years old. He was sitting in a very low sofa, and he couldn't get up. I had to help him up. Anyway, but they said they'd been doing the Mr. Men with Arthur Lowe, who had died. And so from that moment onwards, they were very careful about their voiceover artists, made sure they were fit enough.
And this must have really suited you. We talked about your talent for mimicry. So, for example, you voiced Bananaman, but you also voiced General Blight, the baddie.
It's you, General Blight. That's right, Banana Brain, your old arch enemy.
So there would be scenes where you would be playing against yourself, I suppose.
There were one or two, yes. Yeah. Those were always good fun to do. We did quite a few of those on the radio in the old days too. So, yeah. No, it was good fun. It's always fun to do those voiceover jobs. Get to sit in a nice warm studio.
Yeah. And can I ask, because you did work together over so many years, did you, Bill and Tim, always get on, or did you have fallings out sometimes?
We never had real fallings out. 3 is a very good number because there's always a casting vote. So occasionally one of us would disagree with the other two, but not on the whole. And I don't think it ever rankled and never, lasted more than an hour or so if we did have a debate about something. Occasionally they were, what's the best way to do this or that. No, I think we got on pretty well.
And it's striking that you all had your passions. So Bill went off and did, his bird watching and on the sort of nature programmes, and Tim would be acting in sitcoms and all kinds of things. And then you're doing your mix of acting and factual and script writing.
Yes, no, we went our own separate ways. Bill and I wrote a series called The Astronauts, which followed on from our Goodies time. Which never really did all that well.
Why do you think it didn't do well?
I think we were kind of trying to make it too realistic, and in the sense that it was sort of porridge in space, but only with 3 people.
How can you really know everything's going to be all right?
I know.
Don't
tell her. I know we're going to break that record and get back safely. Because he wants it.
Huh?
He wants it for us, and above all, he wants it for England.
Ah, now, come on, eh?
And it was produced by Clement and Lefrene.
Oh, interesting.
I think, given our head, we would have written Red Dwarf, really.
Yes.
And we just held back from going that far.
There doesn't seem there was never really active talk between the 3 of you of finding another project together necessarily.
No.
Then? No, no.
No, we were never regarded as a precious commodity like that. No. And we had to sort of pitch ideas. It was partly why I did a lot of time acting in theatre, because there was no interest from anywhere else.
Do you know, can I make an observation? I remember when Goodness Gracious and Me team did a programme about looking back at the success of that show, which, again, was transformative comedy, catchphrases across playgrounds, changed the way that people thought about, the South Asian community in Britain. And yet I remember them saying there was no interest in developing their careers after the first 2 series. It was like they all let go. They all had to just pursue their own projects.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something about a failure to take comedy shows seriously.
Yeah, they don't have a sort of transfer season or anything like that. It is strange, and yet they sometimes, television has become a producer's medium now. And it's less to do with the stars than to do with the project. With you can see, you see Wayne Sleep making a fool of himself in the jungle. You can't see him dancing. Producers are the people who want to win the prizes.
That's interesting. What about, you did work with Richard Osman on a show quite early on in his career. And he's really interesting as someone who started out very much on the producing format development side, but has become a talent in his own right. Did you have an insight early on into this guy's going to be big?
Oh, I always thought he was interesting, yeah. I first met him when we did If I Ruled the World.
Good evening and welcome to If I Ruled the World, the show where 4 pretend politicians try to avoid sliding down the greasy pole.
Which he had sort of devised, and... he was
that panel show with Clive Anderson and Jeremy Hardy.
That's right, yeah. And he was very interesting. He was in the production team and the writing team there, and was always very on the ball. And then Tim and I did a series called Beat the Nation.
A leading polling organisation has asked every question in this show to over 1,000 people right across Britain, from Land's End to John O'Groats.
And our contestant scores will depend on just how well or how badly the nation has done.
This was for Channel 4.
Which looks like a kind of early version of Pointless, doesn't it?
It was because it developed the theory of asking an audience... or a group of 100 people or whatever it was, the questions, and then grading them as to whether they were difficult or easy. And then the score in the studio would be depending on how easy or difficult a question you could answer.
So if 87% of people got it wrong and you got it right, you get 87 points.
So that set up the system for the 1% club and also the pointless. And so that was Osman, I think, who developed that idea, which was a very good one.
What do you think of the state of television now? Do you watch much?
I watch a bit, but I'm afraid tend to watch movies and series on Netflix and iPlayer and things. Not so much the terrestrial programme, which is a shame, but...
Do you agree when people think about the 1970s in particular as this golden age of British television? Do you think there was a golden age? Was it when you were working in it?
I think it was, because it was limited. I mean, when satellite came in, I couldn't believe that there were 500 channels I didn't want to watch. But when there were only 3-4 channels, television could be thought of as a world of its own and judged, accordingly. But now there's so much stuff, people... there are huge hits which get 1 million viewers, and they're regarded as a huge hit.
Yes.
Game of Thrones, it never got more than 1 million, as far as I could see. Whereas, in the old days, certainly in the pre-sort of Channel 4 days, the television viewing figures were huge.
Yeah, 10 to 20 million was quite normal.
Yeah.
Welcome to the return of the Goodies. On tonight's show, these heroes of 70s comedy relive their amazing adventures.
Let's make the last thing we talk about Return of the Goodies. This was 2005, which got the three of you back together on BBC Two for a kind of an evening, which is a sort of a quasi-Goodies episode, quasi-retrospective.
With a studio audience, of course.
Yeah. And so there's a recreation of the old set. There's a lot of production, and it feels like there's a bit of love coming your way finally from the BBC. Were you surprised that this was suggested?
Yes, frankly, yes, we were quite. And it was an interesting experience. Again, it wasn't followed up afterwards.
No.
They didn't say, hey, these guys have still got it. Let's give them something to do. But it was quite fun to do. It was, amusing to write some more stuff. And
did they find the original tricycle?
They
or was
did,
that,
or one of them. We went through several.
Now, Batman, he had his Batmobile, James Bond had his Aston Martin, and we had a bike. Rather you didn't applaud it, we hated it. The first day of filming, get on the tram and ride off. But we didn't. We couldn't ride it at all. It was really rather embarrassing. So we had to rewrite it, so we looked as if we were intending to fall off.
Yeah. But I think we weren't insured to ride it.
You'd lean against it, I think.
Yes.
And this might be unfair of me to say, so tell me if it's so, but I interviewed Bill at the time for this. I felt that he felt a bit more disconnected from the Goodies than you and Tim. Is that so? Had he maybe moved on a bit, or he felt it wasn't really, because obviously he was doing the winter and the spring watches at this point?
Yes, I think it's quite possible that he did, that the Goodies was out of his life. I think we all felt that the Goodies was over by then, but I think perhaps Tim and I looked more enthusiastic at playing the old roles again, just for this one last hurrah. But no, and Bill was certainly was on a very different tack by then. Yeah.
I mean, in the show itself, everyone is still, you all click back into the mode, so that's great. What was the ending? Do you remember what the ending of recording was like that night? And did it feel like, well, actually, we finally at least got to make our last Goodies episode together?
No, that's true. It. And I personally have got to go and see a man about a blue tit. So, lads, see you again. Another 25 years, lads.
Bye.
Right. No!
See you.
Yeah, what's going on?
What?
Graeme.
What's that?
Concrete!
They've entombed us again. Damn, I hate it when they do that.
What's happened, fellas? Oh, nothing much. It's just we're going to be stuck in here for the rest of our lives with nothing to do except watch old Goodies repeat. What? I'm a teapot!
I can't remember. I think
sounds like it was a good night.
I think it all just got our hats and went. Yeah. No, I don't recall it being a sort of meaningful ending at all. We didn't all shake hands like the end of the Dam Busters or something.
And I've got to say, because we do different television from different eras, you're the first person in fact the only person I think I can say I grew up dressing like Graeme Garden, because you had a really distinctive look. You had the corduroy jackets with the elbow patches, and I really liked that. I used to dress. So I didn't come cosplaying as you today, but I want you to know that you're the only TV personality that I did dress like. And I still do, actually, on many occasions. I love corduroy.
Well, I shall dress as you in the future too.
I think you sometimes did.
Graeme Garden, thank you so much for coming through the square window with us.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for this time, but Graeme Kibble-White and I will be back next month.
And if you want to drop us a line about anything from today's episode, or any thoughts about Graeme Garden, for example, you can contact us by writing to email@squarewindow.co.uk or looking up Square Window Pod on social media.
But from me and the two Grahams,
Goodbye. Thanks for listening to Through the Square Window. This was a Square Window production with music by local teenagers. The podcast logo was designed by Stuart Manning. Samira and Graeme would love it if you would subscribe and tell other people about the show, and maybe even leave a review on Apple Podcasts.